I'm delighted to be here this afternoon and honored to really have the presence of Mr. Ben Malka, who's a legend in the industry. Ben is the CEO and chairman of Halston Heritage, one of my favorite labels and an iconic brand. Amazing history, Ben. You've had a wonderful track record. At the very young age of 24 years old, Ben was president of a large footwear business in New York. Thank you so much for joining us. So,
thank you.
Hand for Ben, please. The beautiful Assia, so thank you so much for being here. Of course, American Kuwaiti, a social media phenomena.
So they say.
So we read. So how many? 500,000 on Instagram, something like that. I think I have about 1.5. And so, and obviously you too are a legend.
Yes? They say so. I'm having a really hard time.
Well, we were having lunch and you were stopped every 5 minutes. So.
Well, I like to say hi. I talk too much.
Oh, okay. Timing. So today we're talking about innovation and the new generation and innovation going ahead. So Ben, I'm going to start with you. Tell me a little bit about the vision for Halston Heritage since you've taken on the ownership from 2012. What's that vision like for you?
Well, first of all, very few brands in the world had this kind of heritage. And I think when you start with a DNA that is truly clear, you have a base and a foundation to start with. Today, the world is, as we know, through social media and digital media, we're seeing a lot of the product is very blended. Brands are looking more and more, less and less actually differentiate. They're not differentiated as much. And I think when you start with the DNA, you're able to, as long as you're true to the DNA, you're able to create a lot with that. So Halston left us with so many great iconic things, designs that are truly his. And I think, you know, Halston was known as the father of minimalism. And he really came from a time in the late 60s when fashion and designers weren't actually allowed to promote themselves. They were employees. And I think it allowed him to come out and express himself when everything was about European designers. And he took, when we say America, America is very casual by nature. And he wanted women to feel very effortless, very comfortable, and very minimal in their design. So he would take basic things like shirts and make shirt dresses. A very iconic design to this day. Or simple things like, kaftans or saris. Things that were very simple, or halters, and made jumpsuits out of them. But it was always very clean and minimal and about drape and flow. So having that as the foundation, we wanted to take all of that and make sure that we moved it forward to the way women live today, and the way women dress today, and to modernize that. And so, I have a great foundation to work with.
Right. So how do you see that, Ben, especially as you're globally expanding into the Middle East? Of course, it's a key region for you, and you have your partners sitting in the audience, Majd Al Futtaim. So tell us a little bit about how you see that in your vision, this region particularly, and how that essence and the DNA fits within your...
Well, I think the first thing is we decided immediately to go, a lot of brands start in their country, whether it's Europe or in America, and then years later they launch globally. And I think the difficulty with that is you see disparity in a lot of those markets. You'll go to Europe, brands that are mid-level, when they go to America are expensive. And brands in America that are actually mid-level are very expensive here.
So you see there's a synergy between you launching and simultaneously,
globally.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the Middle East, first of all, Middle East is very important because of the fashion is the women are very stylish, they're very brand aware, they understand iconic brands and the value of a brand.
Right.
And it's a very important region. You know, even in my prior businesses, it was a very important region in the Middle East for growth. And there's so many visitors here globally that come here. It was important. But I think what was important for us was to launch in America.
Yeah.
And to launch globally at the same time.
Perfect.
To make sure that we had that.
So that leads us very nicely into Asia, the gorgeous Asia. So can you tell us a little bit about your vision and also why you chose social media as your platform to launch?
I chose social media because we had the opportunity to kind of reach out to a whole wider audience. And if you live in the Middle East and you work in the Middle East and you're on your phone all the time, which I'm guilty of doing, we're really heavily into social media. We've kind of moved on from Facebook. We're Instagrammers and Twitter, and it took so much from us at one point that, you know, I mean, it was involved in revolutions, and so we're very social media, you know, oriented to things. And I didn't want it to just be something where people could log on and look at a blog. So for me, I started out as more of the social change. It was more that I wanted women to kind of push themselves into a place where we were no longer kind of hiding behind this veil, but we were still veiled.
Yeah.
So we weren't hidden from view anymore. We were showing people what we were actually accomplishing. The past 5 years, I've seen so many more women putting themselves out there. They put themselves up on the internet, and they push their businesses, and they're not afraid to have their faces behind all of their businesses now. So that's where I kind of started off from. And so, like I said, more a social platform than a social media thing.
So how did this collaboration begin? And can you talk to us a little bit about that, maybe, Ben? Why this collaboration, and why with Asia specifically?
Well, I think Asia is the fact that she's youthful. I think.
Take it easy there.
Well, I think that's very.
This is a fact, yes.
Yeah, it's a fact. But I think the fact that she's youthful has grown up in the digital age, and I think. You know, social media today is so important for communication, sharing, for you know, being able to tell a story, and I think it's changed a lot of things. And I think what the opportunity for someone who has her own style and product that she promotes, and tells and has stepped up as a face to be able to relay a message of fashion trends, because there's so much information out there that's coming. I think someone to voice it, pull it all together, makes sense, because I think Asia has, you know, obviously has struck a chord since she has 500,000 followers that listen to her and believe her. And I had lunch today with her, and she was often stopped and people thanking her. And I think the idea is that she's allowing the consumer to interact and to believe, to understand and believe in what she believes in and what she's trying to say it as a message. So for us to be associated with Asia in the Middle East as we're launching, I think it gives credibility and validity to what we're doing, and the fact that she chose to promote us as a brand says a lot about Halston itself.
So Asia, how does this collaboration, what does this mean to you, and how did it start?
It means so much to me, because I don't necessarily focus on one of my cultures. I am, you know, I guess what they would call multiracial or whatever it is. But having my mother from the States really had ingrained in me this kind of respect and understanding of what Halston as a brand was. And as an anthropologist by degree, I was very into learning about Halston from its early stages. I mean, if you really look at it, it's more than just an iconic brand. They've set so many trends to what is now used today. And it was a great chance for me to kind of take what is, you know, American sportswear or American chic or whatever it is that you want to call it from Halston, and develop it into what worked in the Arab world. And that was me being able to keep covered. So Roy Halston himself started off as a milliner. So
did you all know that? Are you still awake? Are you listening?
Dun, dun, dun. So he started off as a milliner. So he created all these headpieces. I mean, Jackie Onassis, that's just the pillbox kind of hat. That was something that changed our entire outlook to what headwear and headpieces really were. And so working with them was really easy. It was a great synergy. I already wore this thing on my head day to day, as a lot of you guys do too. So, I mean, making it work with Halston was so easy. It was.
So how did you make it work? Tell us about
we've
that.
I sat down and I designed 6 pieces. So it wasn't on like a massive scale. I wanted them to be bespoke. I wanted them to be really detailed. And so I designed 6 pieces that were modeled around the pieces that I wore most. So whatever it is that I tied on my head day to day was what they really wanted to see from me. So that was produced, and we were able to sell them or auction them off for charity. So full proceeds going to charity, which is very close to Halston as well. They're a very charitable organization. So we gave all of the proceeds are supposed to all go to breast cancer.
And you used the iconic fabrics, or what is it, the materials?
Yeah, so the materials were brought in, they're all provided by Halston, and you can see the continuity between the line itself and the headpieces that I created. So what was seasonally in stores with them were all the kind of fabrics that I worked with. So everything kind of meshes together. So there's a little bit of Asi and a whole bunch of fun Halston.
So it's bringing innovation,
yeah,
right?
Lots
From
and lots.
A new generation into something that's iconic. So Ben, what's really exciting is you've just launched e-commerce. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well,
and you know, the reaction of the
Sure.
consumer.
So, you know, in launching Halston Heritage, we wanted to make sure we had multiple distribution channels. One being, of course, wholesale. It's distributed in the best stores in the world. Harrods in London, Harvey Nichols, etc. And also launching our retail stores. And another platform, of course, was e-commerce. And e-commerce it's not just about the e-commerce part about it. It's a platform that allows the consumer to interact with the brand. It tells the story of Halston's heritage. It tells the story about how we envision the evolution of the brand. Mm-hmm. And we try to style it for the consumer to be able to understand how our vision of styling the product is. So it was very important for us, especially in the digital age, as we know, to be able to use that as a platform to get the consumer to have a full brand experience in the world.
And how important does that seem? Is it increasingly important to have that versus your bricks and mortar?
I still want to believe, especially today, women work very hard during the day, and then they go home and work very hard at night. Mm-hmm. And I think I still want to believe they need an emotional release. And
Retail therapy?
Yeah. I think, yeah. I really believe touching, feeling the experience, their own time, their own experience is still very important. But I do believe it's also an opportunity, e-commerce, to explore the brand and then go to the store and feel it and touch it and have options. And, you know, or the wonderful thing about e-commerce is, you know, purchasing product and trying it in the privacy of your own home. And, you know, and then returning a lot of it, unfortunately. But at least it gives a woman an opportunity.
I can't believe you just said that, returning.
Well, I think
Halston Heritage never have any returns.
No,
ever.
I think dresses is a very, you know, when you're talking about evening gowns, women want to have 5-6 options.
So they'll buy 000 when there's really a 12?
Right.
Is that the kind of thing?
I'm guilty of doing
think
that.
I'm definitely going to
Exactly.
fit into that. Oh, okay.
But I think e-commerce is a very important omni-channel, and mm-hmm. the mobile. I think mobile devices, you know, the fact that there's some businesses that have 60% of their e-commerce is done through mobile devices, not just through traditional e-commerce. So I think it's a way for us to get the brand awareness and the total experience of the world of Halston.
Oh, wonderful. So Asia, tell us a little bit about how your journey has been from a social media and the challenges, and, you know, a little bit more in depth than that.
For me, I started off because we had so many style bloggers outside of the region, and it was really fun to go online and watch them and see what they wore and see what it is they were up to. But a lot of it didn't really appeal to a Middle Eastern market. We couldn't wear the mini skirt that the blonde salad's wearing. You know, we couldn't do those things. So I wanted something that was a little bit more easy to relate to in terms of the Middle East. And so my challenge then was, and my father will kill me I'm going to tell everyone this, I'm going to keep saying it, but my dad had no idea what I was doing because my dad's very traditional. So when I was out and I started blogging, that was my biggest challenge, was like sneaking around my dad. If you're an Arab girl, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not the only guilty person here. So sneaking around him, then when I got married, I was like, I'm a blogger, bye. So it was like, my dad was like, what are you talking about? So that was my challenge. My father was my challenge. But he's
This
very
stays
proud.
in the room, guys,
Yeah,
right?
Nobody tell my dad.
What's said in fashion forward stays in fashion forward, right?
No, but I mean, now he knows, and he's quite proud. He still doesn't understand what I'm
Obviously.
doing, but you know, my dad's a psychologist. He doesn't care about fashion at all. He's just like, I don't understand this frivolity, you know. So that was my challenge, my father, and then my father to me represented the entire culture. You know what I mean? It's like a where you're stopped, where you want to keep going, but you're stopped because you're afraid of what everyone else is going to kind of think and how it's going to appeal to you. And if you're an Arab girl, your reputation, you know, like how am I going to get married? So that was kind of my biggest fear.
You're a blogger equals no marriage.
I know. That was my biggest fear. It's like I'm never going to get married. Luckily,
Okay.
I lucked out. So I got married eventually.
Does he blog
it
as
happens.
well?
Yeah, he does. He does now. He does now. He didn't
So
want
it's
to.
a
in the
blogging
beginning.
match made in heaven, guys.
Yes.
Aw.
It happens. It happens.
Okay.
So that was my biggest challenge. I would have to
So
say.
what is the key to success then?
Don't sleep.
You're obviously very successful.
Never sleep.
Don't ever tell your dad is number one.
Tell him nothing.
Marry a blogger. Okay.
Number two. No sleep. I work a lot. I think that the stigma attached to being a blogger is that you get to go somewhere and you're like, and I'm so happy, and I take a picture of myself and I put it online. It's not that easy. Like, it's really not. So it's a lot of contacts and a lot of speaking and, you know, how you carry yourself, and so it's a lot of hard work. But don't stop. Just keep going.
So what are the lessons learned for both of you during your little journey in your collaboration?
I heard so much from him this morning. I'm like in awe, you know. I was like, stop and listen. I wanted to take notes.
So
but
what
I didn't
are
want to
the
be
key lessons learned
Yeah.
from Ben this afternoon then?
I think that you can really accomplish anything. He accomplished so much at such a young age, and he's kept going. And so that's just another, like, you know, it's another thing where I'm saying don't stop, because obviously he hasn't stopped. You know, he's still here, and you get to do what it is that you want to do if you work hard enough. But
So,
you know.
so Ben, on that point, we spoke a little bit earlier this afternoon about, you know, your childhood and your upbringing, and I think it's really interesting for the audience to maybe get a little bit of that and your achievements. So can you?
Oh my goodness.
All within 2 minutes, of course.
Blast from the
Okay.
past.
I mean, just,
Blast.
you know,
Yeah.
like everyone, you know, who knows what you want to do? You know, I remember one day, you know, I was 17 years old and staring up at the ceiling in bed and saying, what's my wife going to be like? How am I going to make money? What
Did
am
she
I
turn
gonna
out
do?
like you thought she would be?
Oh, much
She's
better.
hot.
Yeah, much
Yeah.
better. I'm a lucky man, of course.
Yeah.
But
You are?
I would say that
She is.
I did dream of her that day, and she turned out that way, so that's pretty
Okay,
cool.
let's stick back to the conversation, Ben. Let's reel this in.
I will do
Okay,
that.
so a little bit
Yeah.
about your career journey, not
Right.
your personal.
Yeah. So, well,
Okay.
it was, but I think at that time, you know, it's relevant because I think we're all, you know, at a young
Dreamers.
age. That's why I'm very impressed, because Asiya took a position at a very young age and took a step forward when it wasn't necessarily accepted.
Yeah.
And saw I think she saw the potential for someone to have a voice where it was appropriate. Because the way she's doing it is very appropriate for her, for the region, for the territory, for the culture, which has to be respected.
Ask my dad. He might have a different opinion.
Yeah, of
Wow,
course.
as a psychologist, you need to have a word with your daddy, right? Because he's coming into the conversation like every 5 minutes.
But I
Okay.
think, you know, at 23 years old, it's quite impressive to
Freudian
be able to do that. So
course.
I think at a young age, I was, like everyone, not sure. And I ended up going to medical school.
Wow.
And graduating as a medical doctor. And I took a year off. And during that journey, you know, I took a year off and went to New York. And I worked in
As one does.
As a lot done.
So how old were you when you?
23.
Okay.
And I worked in a shoe company, and to make a long story short, I invented a shoe. It worked, and I became
Fabulous.
president of the shoe
Shoes,
company.
ladies. Okay.
I became president of that company
Wow.
at 23 and a half. And what's really interesting is, just to show you how life could be, one of the brands we owned was called Danskin Footwear. And it was the first license that Beatrice Foods and Playtex, the mother company, had ever given. And for some reason, the chairman of that company was really, it was their first license, and he was really intrigued by. So every Friday he'd come and visit me, And they were a $17 billion company, and
Wow.
I don't know what he was doing there. And he told me one day, we just bought a big fashion company. And I said, really, which one? This was 1983. And he said, Halston. And I said, wow,
Wow.
I've never heard of that. You know, I was a medical doctor. I never heard of the brand. And it was huge. It was one of the biggest brands. And to show you the full circle in my
Amazing.
life, that's where I started. And to be in that office, and they owned Halston. He said, do you want to meet him? I said, not really. I wish I did, but it was a different
So
time.
that's lessons learned then, right?
Right.
Amazing, amazing story. So how do you see, just going back on the whole social media and e-commerce and the digital realm, you know, how do you see your brands evolving? What's coming next? What should we be looking for?
I mean, first of all, we have to stay true to the DNA. I think
Yeah.
we've seen in fashion a lot of brands go away from their DNA, and even not only luxury brands, but we've seen middle market brands, and whenever they've done that, they have failed.
Yes.
I have seen very few brands succeed when they go away from the true essence of their DNA. So the one thing we have to do is remember what it's about. It's about being, Halston is about being effortless. It's about minimalism. It's about simplicity, drape. He would have 5 sketch artists and a model walk in a room, and they would sketch every single movement of her, have her sit down, lie down, because he was so respectful of a woman's movement and body. And it was all about the drape. And Halston really created that whole thing. So brands that we know today, Calvin Klein, Donna Karan, Celine, even Gucci, all these brands were the essence of those brands came from Halston. Michael Kors, all of that came from Halston, and he was a true leader. So I would say that what we're looking to do is, make sure that we maintain that while making it an approachable luxury brand, because Halston Heritage is the diffusion brand from Halston. Halston is the luxury brand. And it's more affordable and approachable to a broader audience. And we want to make sure that it fits into today's way that women live. And, we have to remember that, at least in America and a lot of other parts in the world, women are much freer in the way that they wear their clothes than they did when he started Ready to Wear in the 80s. It was much more man-tailored in the 80s, more masculine. I think today it's more feminine, the clothing. So we intend the brand to be much more feminine, maintaining the core essence of the DNA, and to make it relevant for today's women while maintaining a lot of the things that made it successful world globally.
And Asya, how do you see yourself evolve in terms of the social media and your approach? And what are your aspirations? What's next for you?
Well, I mean, aspiration-wise, I've been a designer for the past 3 years, so I've had my own clothing line, but my clothing line started off with me at home studying things, making my hands bleed. So now I've gotten to the point where I have a platform to kind of work off of, and so now I've started larger scale manufacturing, and I'm hoping to really focus on my line a lot more. So social media-wise, I'm really hoping that that kind of helps out with my own clothing line. On top of that, I'm opening a boutique, so it'll all be like an online boutique, and it's multi-brand. And I'm using what I have established as a social media person. No, I don't know what else to call myself. Social media person. I'm using that to kind of help with the marketing tool for
So you see online as a significant part of your next move?
I do. I have such a really great international following, so I would hate to kind of keep everything really local and stop myself from expanding much further. So I started off online because then it's accessible to all of my followers, and that's what's really important, to make sure that every person that follows me, if I could meet them all, I would, but get something that I'm working on, and so they're actually following something that I'm doing. So that's where I'm at right now.
So a couple of more questions, then we'll hand over to the audience. So Ben, what would you say defines success?
I think to define success, I think first of all, to really understand what you are trying to do and to be persistent on that, not to give up. Try and find the white space and not just be something else. I think Halston had a very, very good saying. He said, fashion is made by fashionable people. You have to listen to the consumer. They're telling you what they want.
Yeah.
And I think today, like I said earlier, I think too much, especially because the internet is so accessible, everything is kind of blending, and there's not enough differentiation. And everyone has the same clothing in their lines that the others do. I think to be successful, you have to really believe in what you do. You have to find the white space, listen to the consumer, and I think you have to be persistent, even though a lot of people are going to tell you you're wrong.
Right.
And most of the people who are going to tell you you're wrong are historians. They're not people that have vision. And
Not
I think
innovators.
they're not innovators.
Right.
Innovation comes from taking risk and believing. And the consumer will tell you.
Yes.
They'll tell you what they want.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Assia, what's for you? What is success?
I would say the same thing, is to be really innovative
But
and
you can't.
forward-thinking.
You have to say your own.
So I'll say something different, okay?
Sorry.
I tried to take the easy way out.
Yes, you did.
But I mean, yeah, definitely to kind of be forward-thinking and to push the boundaries to things. For Arab women, I see so many Arab women, and not just Arab women, just women in general. We still have that glass ceiling that we're meeting. I mean, I know it's been so far past the, trying to get, equality with men. I do get it, but right now, it's still there. So for me to be, just empowered and innovative about that, that's the most important for me. That would be the definition of success. If you find success as a woman within yourself,
Yep.
that would be the most important thing.
What do you all women say to that?
Ah. Well, this is definitely not a
Superwoman.
fight against sexism. I didn't get a ha.
No. You had a piece of advice to say to an emerging designer or somebody looking to start new, what would it be?
Well, I would say you have to find your voice. And I think being a designer is being a creator. I think you have to remember as designers that there is a big piece of the success, it's the science. And I think success comes from understanding the science, mixing it with the art. And the science, like I said, is people's voices, white space in the market, and really truly believing in what you're doing. Try and be innovative while understanding that fashion sells, but there's also basic items that will make your fashion more appealing.
Right.
And you've got to have that range. So I would say as a designer, find your voice. Don't be afraid to take risk. Listen to the consumer, and make sure you understand how to mix art with science. Because even if you're an accountant, you have to have some kind of art in your work.
Right.
If you're a printer, if you're an artist, it's just what percentage is what.
Yes.
And I think every job that's done on earth has part art, part science to it. And in the case of a designer, it'll be more art. But a lot of designers that came out of big houses, when you ask them, what did you learn the most? They would say the science part, because they don't realize how much science is involved with the art.
Absolutely.
And don't get stuck in the historian piece. You have to learn from it, and you have to know when to move on. It's very important, because a lot of people get stuck in the past, and their product keeps looking over and over. So at the beginning it's innovative, and then
they lose it to commerciality, and there's no more innovation.
And listening to the historians. It's very dangerous, that.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Ben. And Assia, what about you?
We have as an issue here where you are purely, I'm relating this back to myself, so I'm very sorry, but where you're purely a covered designer, where you only, kind of design for the covered woman. You box yourself in so much that you're not going to be able to take on like a kind of global market. I'm still an emerging designer, but I've never really called what I wear hijab because it's too controversial or it doesn't change things. So I stay away from keeping them as like, I'm a covered brand, I'm a this brand. So kind of keep yourself where you are not so much comfortable, push yourself, and just constantly make sure you're up and forward thinking with things.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Fantastic.
Thank you.
We're going to open up the questions to the audience. So any questions, please?
Ben, I want to ask you about the importance of a shopping environment to present and position your brand. How important is that been for Halston?
Well, I think like anything, there's an emotion that has to be created. And what we chose to do is to take, like our stores are based off of Halston's apartment, where, you know, the footwear shelves are circular and floating like his staircase. He loved theatralization of, he actually created movement in windows. He was an innovator of that in store windows. So we created center stages, a lot of mannequins. Our handbag wall was based off the trellis in the front of his house, very geometric. But we did it with a lot of warmth because we wanted to make sure it was inviting and not a cold environment. You know, architecture in general is very masculine. It's very masculine and very linear. You see a lot of stores. I just walked through Dubai Mall. They're very dark and black, and I think that's very masculine. So we wanted to make sure that not only did, because architecture is very masculine to begin with, we wanted to make sure we took those elements and made it very warm for the consumer. So I think that's where we theatralized the whole vision of the brand. And a woman that walks in, or a customer, they have to feel comfortable shopping, and they have to understand your vision through your visual impacts.
Hi, I'm Lena. I have a question for Ashia. How do you intend to launch your online store, you said? You mentioned something about that. And what do you intend to call it?
It's called The Blend. It's going to be offering menswear and women's wear. The launch itself is going to kind of take off of what Kate Spade did in New York, if anyone else has followed that, the Saturday window shopping type thing. So we're kind of bringing in the same idea, and we're trying to get a whole bunch of people in at once to really interact with the site, because we're trying to get it to be really different and innovative and easy to interact with. And so the point would be to bring in a whole bunch of people, be able to interact and literally buy at the launch itself. So it's going to be a whole bunch of fun, I hope.
Where will it be?
It's going to be in Kuwait, the first launch. We're looking at launching in Dubai as well, but it's a whole other process of things. So much to think about. So yeah, Kuwait for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi Ben, you were talking about historical, you're not going to get caught up with the historians. This region is steeped in its history. Do you think that the fashion industry here can translate into a contemporary DNA?
I think when I say not to get caught up in the past, actually it's very important. When you look at houses like House of Louis Vuitton and all the brands they own, they actually have a building where you go in and they have rooms for every brand that give you codes of a DNA. So there are codes, like for instance, Halston, the things we talked about, it's effortless, minimalism, halter tops, one shoulders, fluidity, glamour, sophistication. These are codes, and he loved gray. I don't know why, and orchids. These are, you'll find that in our stores, elements of gray built in, or orchids. So when I talk about DNA and how to modernize that, you know, things are current. Women today are more, when you think back about 1980, when he launched ready-to-wear, you know, Claude Montana with the shoulder pads, and Terry Mueller and Halston, everything was very closed up. Women were fighting for their right for jobs, men's jobs, and they wanted to be taken seriously. I think obviously today there's a lot more ease around the world in that, and I think that, you know, women are more comfortable with the clothing. So in this region, especially as I go and look through the success of companies I've been president of, I know a lot about what works and doesn't already, and understand that. I think there are, it's not just regions. Think about the United States. I mean, the United States, you go to New York and it's London. You go to Miami, it's Spain. You go to the West Coast and it's Mexican and Asian. There's a continent of all diversity. It's cold in one place, freezing and snow, and it's warm in the other. So the United States is actually a very good melting pot to understand the global world. The fact that we're in Los Angeles as opposed to New York, because New York was based off of European fashion. That's how it started. Halston actually helped make Europe, New York, very similar to the European things. It's very wool-based. Europe is very structured. It's very wool-based. And so when you look at the emerging markets today, it's the Middle East, in terms of fashion, India, South America, these are very warm, Southeast Asia, these are very warm climates. Los Angeles is a leader in contemporary. It's where it began because it had very blended and fluid fabrics as opposed to wool. So actually, the fact that we're in Los Angeles makes it very easy for us to be more of a global brand, especially in the emerging markets. So it's a mixture of that and taking the heritage of a brand and making sure that you stay with the iconic parts of it, but bringing it current for today's consumer, whoever she is.
You talk about the new generation. The investment in Alston must be quite large, correct?
Yes.
So why putting so much money into Alston? Okay, let's take the example of Mr. Arnault, who just decided to put $50 million on relaunching Moana, or Diego Della Valle launching Schiaparelli. So why taking such a huge, large of money when at the moment in New York, in Paris, in London, in Shanghai, in Bombay, you have extremely creative people where you could put 1/10 of that money and maybe create...
In the Middle East as well. We have a lot of
Arabs. Of course,
we're
and
here.
the Middle East.
This venue is full of talent,
of course.
yes.
I mean, everywhere at the moment, there's a new generation of creators. So I wonder why so much money is going into these brands and the fact that we cannot accept that certain brands can die. Okay, I was in Paris last week and
Wow, that's extreme.
I don't think Schiaparelli ever died.
Accept them to die.
I mean, I want to be clear about that. I was in Paris 2 weeks ago,
yes.
and the biggest designer of the world at the moment, it's an Arabic designer. It's Azzedine Alaïa, and Mr. Alaïa confirmed to me that once he dies, he wants his brand to die. So, I mean, to close.
Right.
Okay, that's what he said. He said he wants the brand to close. So today I see all this money going into all these brands, and I don't see any money pouring into the young brands.
Fair question. Excellent question.
Very good question. So first of all, I think...
And you master the science of fashion.
Right.
Okay, you master the industry. So why can't you find 10 of these people who will bring you the voice and put that money into those 10 people?
So first of all, it's a very good question. I think
the
first thing is my age and my...
You're 21, what,
right.
21, 22?
I think it was my decision of, so in me in particular, I'm going to have to answer for me. I can't answer for other business people. I would say that for myself, it was about how much more time I wanted to put in my career in this and contribute to the fashion world. And, you know, I do have, it's important work, but I think the people in the Middle East here would understand that family is very important. And I want to be able to give that part of my life. So in my decision, you know, we were able to open stores in London, the Middle East. We did a huge investment with Majid Al Futtaim, and we're opening in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, in Mexico City, Jordan, etc., all next year with people that already knew Halston and they knew the brand. If I was able to, this year, our first year in operation, we opened over 22 stores globally and in the United States. If I were to start a brand, even with my experience and my knowledge and my network, they wanted to see, you know, will it work? What's the DNA? They want to see it proven. It's years that I wasn't willing to think. Now, you have to remember, all the CEOs, every one I've spoken to, from Harrods to Harvey Nichols to Saks to Rustans in the Philippines, all of them were either buyers of when Halston was at his peak, or they were aware of what he did to the industry and how he innovated it. And believe it or not, I'm not going to say half, but an enormous amount of things that we all know in the fashion industry he actually created for us. He was such a genius. And it wasn't just the product, it was those innovations. And so my answer to you was, I went much faster because of it. I was able to sign 80 stores worldwide in my first 3 months. As a matter of fact, Majid Al Futtaim signed a deal with us for multiple stores in the region without ever seeing one of ours be open. And I would never be able to do that with a brand I'd start up.
You can help me with that, I don't mind.
However, I'd
right
like
here.
to answer your question because I think it's an outstanding question and very well deserved. And watch this space because in about 3 months' time, you might just hear about that. So just a little sneak peek, guys, because absolutely, you know, emerging talent is the future. And, you know, with respect to Ben, he had a vision and he chose a brand. However, you know, I come from an angle that I completely believe in the future talent. I think that we have to look at, you know, new generations because fashion is getting stagnant and stale. It's repetitive, it's boring. Walk around and see the malls, they all look the same. It's cookie cutter because everybody's knocking everybody off and Zara looks like Gucci and Gucci looks like H&M and H&M. So you have to have that emerging talent. And I respect the fact, you know, one point you said is because Halston had a lot more to give and you're bringing back all of the learnings and how he worked as well as the product.
Well, the other thing is you have to also recognize that people like the Louis Vuitton group, where you talk about why aren't they giving they are giving them a voice. You have people like, you know, at Lanvin, Albert Elbaz, that had a small voice and became a big voice. And you had people like Michael Kors. The reason why Michael Kors even had an opportunity was because Louis Vuitton gave him a chance to design Celine. And et cetera, et cetera. In our company, I'm giving young designers, we have 50 people in our design group, that I'm giving them an opportunity to take a DNA and evolve it to today's woman and to use their talent. And that's going to give them a learning for them to move on one day. But of course we believe in young talent and innovation. As a matter of fact, I spent half my morning in my meeting speaking about my absolute concern. Because as much as digital media is important to get the message out and the voice, it's also, there's a detriment because everything is now looking the same. The speed of information, I remember years ago, when I wanted to see one runway of a collection, I'd pay $5,000 to see pictures.
Exactly.
Today, before...
Not too long ago, huh?
Not too long ago, in 05, 06.
Yeah, exactly.
Today, on Style.com, it comes down the runway and H&M's knocking it off. I mean,
but that's why, to your point, you need that new energy, you need that new evolution, you need that innovation, you need to give that platform for the young designers.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't take that step, Ben, the industry will die. Who will replace the greats out there? If you look at the creative directors, you know, other than we have Alexander Wang, we have a smaller generation or proportion, but when you look at who's going to replace the greats, to your point, they will die. And then if we look at what Hedi Slimane has done to YSL, I mean, we can go into a whole other session, right?
That was so upsetting.
Hey,
so
he moved to LA, I like him.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I mean,
but absolutely.
I think myself as a young designer, if I didn't have the ability to study Roy Halston or to study Eliza Schiaparelli, or if I didn't have the ability to study those things that haven't been kept alive, Schiaparelli just recently, but I mean, like Coco Chanel, you have to have that, you have to give way to the greats to kind of still be around. I would hate for a brand to just die off because the designer that founded it did, because there are so many people that studied under them, that understand their vision, that want to keep it going. So while we do have a huge need to invest in young designers, I do see the need to keep
But that's the history that Ben is referring
to.
Right?
You have to remember, guys, also, there's a whole world. If you go to Asia, they feel, these are conversations I've had a lot, they feel like they've missed out the last 50 years. They want to get part of the heritage. That's why they're so vested in brands that are heritage brands, because they feel like they missed that whole out. And when you look at brands like Halston, it influenced Rick Owens, which influenced Helmut Lang, which influenced, these are all influences that young designers are taking and making it their own. And it's successful, and people are reacting to it. So I look at it as there is the foundation, and there's these heritage brands, and brands like Celine have emerged because, and Michael Kors, and Helmut Lang, and all that because of people like Halston. And I think people want a part of history. We all do, you know, that in things. So,
but we need to create our own new history as well.
Absolutely,
but
they
that's
are.
the perfect place to be.
They are, because of what I was just saying. You got people like Helmut Lang and all these. I think they did a great job at taking that and making it very rock and roll and very, you know, very current for today's girl. That is a little more edgy, but you would never see Halston look like that. So it was actually very important because they have emerged from these brands.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, I hope that answers your question. Long answer.
All right, I think we're done. It's a wrap. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben and Assia. Fantastic. Thank you.